Happy Thursday and welcome to this episode of Tech Bites powered by Veeam. And we are going to talk about red teaming your disaster recovery as a service plan. And I tell you what, there's no better person to talk about that than my guest today, Dante Orsini, Chief Strategy Officer at 1111. How are you today, Dante?
Rick, I'm great. Thanks for having me on. Super excited today.
Yeah, so, I've known Dante for a long time, friends, and 1111, clearly a leader in this. I call it a service provider. I don't even know if that's how you would identify 1111. But friends, they're very integrated across the Veeam stack, a longtime partner. Happy to have them on. And honestly, we probably should have done this earlier, but you've been on Industry Insights, so I'll give you a pass there. But Dante, you're tuning in from Texas, if I'm right.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. And then our social media engineer, Felicia, is also in Texas. Jeffrey, the video producer, and myself are in Central Ohio, but we want to know where you are tuning in from. We see one gentleman already tuned in, and he was in early from Taiwan. This is worth staying up at night for. So welcome. I can't pronounce the name from Taiwan, but let us know in the chat where you're tuning in from. We're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook. And if you can drop a comment in, Felicia will relay this back to the map. We got a pretty cool, we call it a maplication that I like to do that'll visualize who is tuning in. So let us know what state in the US or what country. And I think we can even break down Canadian provinces, but we'll go from there. All right. 1111 Systems, like I said, longtime service provider, truly one of the biggest and biggest household names in the space, Dante. But give me an overview and an intro of 1111, but then walk us into that DRaaS conversation as well.
Sure. And, I think from our perspective, right, that if we look at our relationship, Rick, it actually goes back to 2009, right? And if you look at 1111, 1111 was founded a couple of years ago, but they've acquired several industry leaders. One of those companies being known as Island. We're the ones that started working with Veeam back in 2009, but we're a global managed infrastructure services provider, right? Super focused on delivering, production applications and the ability to, scale those apps and help people modernize and, obviously protect their infrastructure and deliver a better management experience. But if I look at what we've built with Veeam, Veeam's the core of everything we've done. If we're talking about production, we integrated Veeam into our IaaS platform way back then to be able to provide our customers with, a robust backup and data protection solution. But what's interesting is as time went on, you've also seen, organizations that are really trying to, move to more of a hybrid type of infrastructure. And a lot of folks are looking for ways that they can leverage a third party like us to provide things like disaster recovery, so they can get out of having to build and manage a secondary data center. But as you're well aware, right, we've embraced the whole Veeam portfolio. So there's a lot of additional services we deliver, but we've also started ourselves to look at how do we deliver these services in more of a hybrid fashion, not just from our own data centers, but also from some of the hyperscalers that are out there, right? So when we talk about the investments we've made, I'll speak to DR in just a second, but I think what's unique about our approach is we always started with, best of breed technology in trying to focus on that goal for the customer to make sure that they can actually deliver business critical production applications. So to do that as a provider, we had to have the right types of backup, the right types of security, the right types of networking technologies, right? But to make it simpler on our partners and our customers, we wanted to deliver it all through a single unified interface, right? And if you look at the DR use case, making sure that the infrastructure that you're landing on performs the same way it literally is delivered on the same platform that you deliver production applications on, right? So that's what's unique about our approach. So giving people complete access to that infrastructure so they can understand what's happening, not only with the production side of it from a monitoring perspective, but to also understand what's happening on the network side. And this is the critical component, as we all know, to any robust recovery strategy, right? If you don't have the network right, nothing's going to work. You could have all the data, all the capacity in the world in the secondary site, but this is where we spend a lot of time working with our partners and our customers on the front end to ensure we understand how they've deployed their networks and that we can actually change as little as possible right, during the recovery process. And Veeam's actually built some really robust technology to make that even easier that we'll talk about in a second. But as you might imagine, right, if you fail over an environment, it's got to have the same types of processes and controls that you would expect in a production environment and giving you complete control post-event. And that's where we've really focused our development efforts. So that's just a quick glance at our platform. But I just want to touch on this, Rick, because I can't stress it enough. Veeam did some really cool stuff with replication years ago. And one of the things I want to call out, and I'll be the first to admit, I'm not a network person. I could barely spell network, right? But one of the unique things that Veeam has done is they've enabled people to leverage replication without having to establish a layer 2 VPN. Now, granted, most people, based on their designs, they're going to want to have a VPN in place in a secondary data center. However, if you have not touched Veeam replication and you want to put your hands on it, I'd encourage you to do so, because the simple fact that we do not require a VPN to leverage Veeam replication, it's allowed us to build a completely automated test drive on our website. You don't even have to talk to a human. All you have to do is have some chops like Rick, understand the Veeam stack, right? And you can actually sign up for a test drive. It'll automatically provision it. And then you can, actually play around with replication and understand what that looks like into a platform like ours.
So a whole bunch of stuff to unpack there, Dante, and that's a really good overview. One thing I want to hit on is the networking, and it's a little bit of a joke. Like I said, I'm based in Central Ohio. Again, let us know in the chats where you're tuning in from. We'll come back to the map here in a second. But I used to go up to the tech support, actually down, third floor, whatever, to the tech support area. And it was specifically the group who supported the service providers. And they had on the whiteboard, it was this little chart. It was DNS. It was networking, but not DNS. It wasn't networking. And Dante, not even kidding. Of course, it was a lot of DNS, but it was networking, but not DNS, very little not networking. They literally had a little check mark of this. It is one of those things that anything we can do to make it easier would really be attractive. And I love this view here, because what might be overwhelming to the customer is on the right. That's like, okay, I don't know NSX. A lot of enterprises, mid-size orgs aren't using that, but you're making that easy through these gateways and the extension appliances. And I think a lot of people miss that, because on the left, kind of the customer stack, that's a very transparent type of standard stack, right? So the networking is quote unquote simpler there. So you can get this really robust DR without the networking being too complicated, no VPN, one port, 6180, love that. And we got a question from J Buff tuning in at the Veeam on tour in Brazil. He is watching this, so thank you. He says, quote, I am jealous that Rick got Dante on the Thursday show before I could get him on the Tuesday. Well, Jason, you had him a few years ago, I'm told. So come on. Awesome. But yeah, Jason's tuning in from Brazil. We have the Veeam on tour going on down there in Sao Paulo. Obrigado. All right. So Dante, really good overview of some of the different thoughts here, but I think there's some secret sauce in that purple box going on with the on-demand compute, accelerated storage, and more. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So from our perspective, just to reiterate on the network side, right? I just wanted to call that piece out because it makes it very easy for somebody to test this if they have not developed a strategy with Veeam replication yet. But just know that the network has to be extremely flexible to make sure that we can support a lot of very complex use cases, right? So this is just a very high level overview. But to your point, Rick, if I look at what we're doing on the back end, we've got a lot of folks here that have specialized in trying to automate as much of this as possible. And we actually put together this solution years ago. Again, we wanted to keep it clean and simple and deliver on that promise of a cloud service provider, right? So what do you expect when you're leveraging a cloud infrastructure? Well, you want to make sure that that is flexible, that you're simply paying for what you consume, right? So what we did is we packaged this up, and Veeam made this very easy on us. It allowed us to think about, okay, what is a customer leveraging every single day if they're leveraging us as a replication target. Well, they're leveraging network. Well, okay, we've got tons of network, right? Well, they're also leveraging storage, right? Storage is being consumed. So, we built our cost model around combining all these different things, our support, the network, all simplified and getting it down to a simple cost of storage. And then because we've got, 65 points of presence globally and tons of capacity, it allows us to actually meter our environment for compute on an hourly basis, right? So in this case, you don't have to worry about buying racks of servers in hopes that you might use them, or relying on the stuff that really should be end of support, that maybe used to be your old production environment and you shipped it off to a secondary site and hoping and praying that if you fail over to it, it'll perform, right? This allows you to actually leverage the capacity we have and simply pay for what you consume, if and when you consume it, right? I think the other piece that's unique and that we kind of brushed over when we were going through the platform side of it is giving our customers complete control if they want it. So if you want to be able to go in and do a test, you don't have to call us to do it. If you want to go in and actually fail over an application or applications, you don't have to call us to do it. That said, we have some customers that are running a little bit more lean from an operations perspective that need the help. And in those cases, we can actually provide, the management to actually do the testing for you, to do the actual failover for you. And regardless, we include support 24/7. So it's a very simple, very clean approach to something that can be extremely complex for people to achieve on their own.
So I have a number of questions and comments there, but first, the producers have let me know that the map is ready. So let's light that up. We have Brazil, big country, lit up. We have Chicago. I see more people in the comments talking across the different platforms. Let us know where you are so we can light up the map. We go over to there's Brazil. Let's go over to let's just go east, so we'll call it that way. We got South Africa, we've got Bangladesh, we've got United Arab Emirates, and we also have there's Bangladesh and Taiwan, special administrative region out there. So welcome of China. So thank you all. Sorry, Taiwan is not a special administrative region. Holy buckets, that was a mistake. We are live. I messed that up. Apologies. Taiwan ROC, not SAR. Very different. Sorry about that. But anyways, welcome everyone. And so on the DR topic here, one thing I want to highlight, you mentioned unlimited bandwidth on this, and then you mentioned also some of the different, hourly cycles. But like the networking again is, is there egress? Do we have to think about those types of things when we go into DR in this mode?
Nope, not at all. No, and I think the only time you would see, I'll give you an example. Sometimes we have customers that have made investments in private networks. So they may want to extend a leg of that private network directly into us, right? So if that's the case, right, then we can always, provide a device or if the customer is leveraging a certain technology and they want us to co-locate that and tie it into all the segments on the back end to facilitate that secure design that they've deployed globally for all their sites. We do that all the time. So you have opportunities to do things like direct connects and SD-WAN, things of that nature, right? So that's what I meant about flexibility on the network side. But if somebody's just simply replicating to us over IP with a VPN or taking advantage of the replication appliance that Veeam provides, there's no additional cost.
I love that. And when you think about, there's also something you mentioned that I'd say is a worst practice that sounds like a good idea at the time, using the old infrastructure for the DR. And I can tell you, friends, in the lab work we've done, it's one of those things that once you give older systems a large amount of work, you may find new problems or find parts of memory that aren't actively used and really can't handle the big workloads. So I give a lot of caution to using the old, the old infrastructure as part of the DR plan, because if you go all in, whether it's, fire, flood and blood, ransomware type of scenarios, it's one of those things that you don't know until you truly light it up if these old platforms can really carry the load. So you mentioned that, and I think a lot of people do that, Dante, and I don't think that's a good idea. It's just a really important point.
Yeah, 100%. I think DR tends to be one of those things where a lot of organizations that may not have been aggressively looking at cloud technologies. It's definitely on the spectrum, if you will. So we kind of call it the cloudometer, right? Like you think about a tachometer. What are you leveraging the cloud for? Are you storing data there? Is it for backups, for dev tests, for production? DR is definitely in that first 30% of use cases we see, because the challenges people have in building and managing a secondary data center. Yet now, as you mentioned with cyber, it's never been more critical, right? Like it has to be a part of someone's approach to providing any kind of resiliency to the business, and it's quickly becoming a board level conversation as people are trying to maintain the right processes and controls to not just align on cyber liability insurance, but to maintain those policies if you're able to achieve them.
Indeed. And we got a question that came in from Sergio. Sergio says, how does the DRaaS that you're talking about, Dante, how does that integrate with my existing Veeam backup and replication setup? And I think that's a very easy one, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the best part about this, right? So Veeam actually developed a solution to make it easy for customers that are leveraging Veeam locally to continue to leverage their local interface to be able to fail over into a cloud-based infrastructure, right? So on our side, Veeam's approach is what they call Cloud Connect Replication. They've specifically built a solution for service providers like us to be able to provide you with access to our Veeam-based infrastructure and all the compute capacity that we provide. I think what we showed earlier, right, is to give people another semblance of, God forbid, the worst case scenario happens and you can't get to your local infrastructure. All you need is a network connection to get to our interface to orchestrate a failover, or pick up a phone and call us and we'll actually orchestrate the recovery for you.
And I think that's also important, Dante, because you mentioned a boardroom conversation. It's like, hey, there is a gap. We do not have the DR we need because of that single port, because of this on-demand trial, because of this easy onboarding from a Veeam deployment. This could be something that we could start the solution today around. And that is just wicked awesome in technology speak, because you can literally solve it same day. And I think that's got to be really attractive to a lot of people.
100%. And I think that the other piece that I think we have to talk about today is really, how does this impact the whole approach to cyber recovery, right? And this is why leveraging Veeam to accomplish so many different use cases in a single piece of software is so valuable. When we look at this, a lot of people can get confused around, disaster recovery versus cyber recovery. And, I think when you look at disaster recovery, it's very much focused on replicating, right, from point A to point B. And as we all know, from a cyber event perspective, depending on, how the bad actor compromised the infrastructure, usually one of the first things they go after is the backup infrastructure, right? Which obviously drives up their propensity to hold somebody, hostage for ransom. But a lot of people overlook, what it takes to be cyber resilient. And our approach to this is, and I'm not going to really speak too much about this, but think about all the preventative risk controls on the front end, the moat that you're building around the castle, right? As we know, the business is usually more distributed than the old, castle analogy these days. So, despite your best efforts to protect, all your data and applications, you could still find a way through social engineering or other ways, right, to get into someone's infrastructure. So while a big part of our business is delivering managed security services from risk scanning all the way to XDR, we still have to have a strong means and a process to recover, God forbid, the infrastructure has been compromised. And I think, Rick, you're probably seeing a lot of this too. And I think especially with some of the recent acquisitions with Coveware. But I just want to, throw that out there, and I can obviously speak to our approach to this. But is this a common challenge you're seeing as well?
Yeah, so the Coveware acquisition really put a very important additional perspective for me on this cyber recovery readiness. And at Veeam Bill Siegel from Coveware by Veeam who is the CEO of that unit. And Coveware by Veeam still functions as a very kind of specialized group. And so he's CEO of that business unit still. But he has said something to the effect, a loose quote from memory. He said something to the effect of, he can tell in the first 15 minutes of a call how well prepared an organization is to deal with the incident in front of them. It is all about this preparation, giving thoughts to what's identified, what's protected, and have you done recoveries? Do you know it works? Do you know where things are? Do you know your own encryption passwords? Those types of things. One thing everyone agrees upon is the preparation you do left of the bang will 100% predicate what happens right of the bang. And the numbers are telling us that, you know, a cyber threat is the disaster we are most likely going to deal with. And I just realized I forgot to mention Denmark and Netherlands. They're really up. Jos and Casper, I'm so sorry I missed you two on the map application. My bad. But yes, I mean, I think we all agree the preparation is key.
Yep, 100%. I think one of the things that we've done a lot of work on is helping people understand what those vital data assets are. That's what we mean. That's what we mean when we say BDA, right? And you know, here's a great example for you. If you look at, you know, two critical systems run the business, you know, let's talk about ServiceNow versus, let's say, Salesforce, right? So if somebody were to compromise Salesforce, right, and you know you're not able to, you know, produce quotes as an example, that's going to have an impact to the business for sure. I mean, all these have an impact from a compliance perspective, right? From a risk and liability perspective. But let's just talk about operating the business, right? If I can't produce a quote for a customer, it's not going to kill the business, right? Whereas
not immediately,
not immediately, right? Not immediately. Yeah. But if I can't, you know, actually operate the business and support the business, you know, the impact of compromising, you know, ServiceNow could be much greater. Okay, so that's like the view of a traditional business impact analysis. Now, when we look at cyber and we look at the value of the data, right, it flips that on its head. Because if somebody gets access to ticketing information, sure, it's bad that, you know, you've got, you know, customer contact information, things of that nature, right? But if I look at somebody getting complete access to the entire customer database, now the value of that data is even higher, right? So it basically takes sometimes what I'm trying to say is your most vital applications may not be the most precious data when you put yourself in the shoes of somebody trying to hold you ransom for the data, right? So we go through a process to help people understand what that looks like. And then it's almost like, you know, Rick, you and I spoke about this. It's almost like, you know, chaos engineering, right, for recovery, because you simply do not know how far and wide the compromise is. So when we're going through these test case scenarios, it's very much, you know, a red team solution where we're playing around with, okay, you can't get access to the sites anymore because, you know, the data that ran the systems that gained you access have been locked up, right? So there's all sorts of different things to try to prepare somebody for. But at the end of the day, you know, right back to your comment, preparation is everything. Running through tabletop testing exercises to understand who needs to be engaged, how they need to be engaged, you know, what that, you know, process looks like. Meanwhile, adding to that if you are leveraging, you know, a third party, you know, like a Coveware, or if they're appointed by your cyber liability insurance carrier, right, they're going to be doing negotiations with the bad actors. You know, you're going to have folks that are trying to figure out, you know, what type of data they can get access to. And one of the areas where we provide a lot of value is, you know, not only maintaining a copy of those backups for you, but making sure that we've got a lot of capacity to quickly stand up completely isolated clean room infrastructure, right? That's completely walled off. So if you're leveraging somebody like a Coveware, those teams need access to that capacity to help expedite the recovery process, right?
Yeah.
It's just often overlooked. So beyond just the ill preparedness of the team, having access to capacity is a big deal.
Oh, for sure. And it's one of those things that when you're in a moment, you need every asset at your disposal, including some that you may not have even had. And, you know, I think it all starts from that really solid, reliable, immutable backup. And, that's a very good conversation starter. And I know you all can help the market with that also.
100%. And, when we were chatting before this, you were asking what's new, right? So there's a couple things I alluded to earlier. From our perspective, we've actually went out in the last 2 years and we've built a really strong relationship with AWS. As you're aware, Rick, like we had delivered storage at scale globally for a very long time. We even wrote our own object store platform. And I think we were looking at an opportunity to increase that global scale. So the way that we always went to market was to keep this very clean and simple for our customers. So they just simply paid a per terabyte rate. There were no egress fees, no API calls. And we wanted to take that same methodology to our relationship with AWS. So I'm super excited about this. We've been able to deliver a platform on top of AWS S3 standard storage. And what we've done is we've integrated this into our platform. And we're delivering this at a simple per terabyte rate, no egress costs, no API calls. And from our perspective, people can consume it on demand or they can commit to contract terms to lower the cost. And when they do that, we simply still charge them monthly. We've got a ton of experience in how to do this, but I think that the collaboration with Veeam was super valuable. We spent 6 months testing every possible Veeam use case that can leverage object to make sure that we could actually put a solution in place that could actually meet those objectives from a cost perspective, and also on the resiliency side, right? Since we're leveraging standard, you've got 3 copies of the data across, a region in 3 different availability zones, fully supported by us. And obviously, we share the same level of focus on the security and compliance side as both Veeam and AWS. So, when we look at cost-effective ways to approach cyber resiliency, this is a foundational aspect. Obviously, being able to leverage immutability is a big deal. But at the same time, I think what's different about this is rather than being just a point that only provides storage as a service, since we're doing this on AWS, we have access to EC2. So it provides a lot of opportunity to take advantage of some of the recovery aspects that Veeam supports natively, and also to get more creative in how we can build, cyber recovery services on top of that as well.
Well, I think it's also reasonable to expect you'll see more from Veeam about this. I'm just going to leave it right there. Okay, so one question came in from Sergio again. What kind of monitoring and reporting are available for this? And I think I want to, I don't know when you came in, Sergio, but up earlier we had the views of the console, some glances of the console. My recommendation to that would be download a trial or sign up for a trial. And that way you can see in the portal, that type of monitoring and reporting. But anything you'd want to add to that, Dante?
Yep, you nailed it. And I think what we've also done is we've integrated, the ability to provide, recovery testing reports, directly into the platform as well. But again, our goal is to make sure that you've got complete visibility into every aspect of that target infrastructure, whether it's, building, managing, deploying virtual machines, storage, network, and also understanding the monitoring of those resources, right? All built straight into the platform.
Awesome. And then I know we have a couple more slides, but we only have a few more minutes.
Yep.
You want to bring us home on the last couple of topics?
Yeah, real quick. So I think the other piece I think that's interesting about the AWS side, right, is where that relationship started for us is they actually approached us to help fill a gap in their portfolio on the connectivity side. So that's where it started. And now we're delivering a managed last mile and managed connectivity solution via the AWS marketplace. This, for folks that are looking to leverage AWS, we're a direct connect partner. So it opens up additional opportunities here, especially when you're talking about trying to move massively large data sets. The final thing I'll throw at you, Rick, that years ago, when we were really scaling this business, like how do we take the best Ricks that we have inside of our company, right? Because you guys don't grow on trees, right? And scale that. So we built a tool called Catalyst. It's a self-contained app. You can pick it up on our Success Center. But it's designed for a VMware-based infrastructure. So we can install it, give it read-only creds. It pulls an inventory, but what it does is allows you, the user, to actually take a look at what you have and build a use case with it. What are you trying to do, right? Back to the cloudometer, right? Am I trying to back up to a cloud provider? Am I trying to replicate for DR? Am I trying to migrate for production? What's the compatibility look like? Let's look at the network. How long is it going to take to move the data, right? What's the best route as far as locations. What this does is it allows us to use real data from your environment and from with your feedback to build a proper use case to ensure that you get the right outcome. And frankly, it also lets us know if there's things in your environment that we're going to have to talk about, right? Am I trying to push a basketball through a garden hose from a network perspective? Let's talk about your network, right? You're never going to make, the objectives if we don't have enough pipe there. Do I have like raw device mappings or things like that take additional, discussions around architecture? It's all built into this. So the goal is to save you time to get to the proper solutions straight away.
Outstanding. And then one more slide here, which just has a quick resource. And Felicia, if you could you push this URL through the streams in case anyone's like, I can't see the QR code. But we'll get that link pushed out to the chats. And a couple of points I want to highlight here. We've got many more shows coming up. Let's see, next week, Industry Insights. We're going to have we're going to talk about 12.2, which went GA yesterday, FYI, Veeam backup and replication, Veeam 1, 12.2. By the way, if you're using a managed service provider, check with your provider before you upgrade. Don't do day zero stuff, or else you'll have something going interesting for you. Secondly, next week on Tuesday, the hackathon is 5th of September. Not the 5th, but 2nd of September. The hackathon, Tech Bytes will be taken over for a hackathon preview. Sorry, it is the 5th of September. And then lastly, we're going to be promoting Veeam Data Resilience Summit. And I said that right. I was calling it Data Resiliency, but it's Data Resilience Summit. What is this? This is the product formerly known as Veeam Update or Veeam Virtual, or that second half of the year. It's a virtual event, online event you can attend for free. It's going to be on the 1st of October, and APAC, that'll actually be the 2nd of October. So check this out. We're going to push a URL for that as well. But Dante, thank you so much for joining me here on the stream today.
Rick, team, thanks so much. Appreciate the
time.
Yeah,
man. Appreciate it. Always bringing the energy and the solutions, or maybe solutions first, energy. I don't know, but you're bringing them both, and I love it. And a big thank you also to Jeffrey and Felicia, our producers. That does us for us here live on all those socials. We'll see you next week. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.